Okay, we are live on the Instagram and all the channels. Howdy, Guardians! Welcome to our Friday live stream. We're going a little early today. Just hopefully some of our friends from Europe can join us before it's nap time for them. And we're here to talk with the two geniuses behind Necessary Evil and Doomguard, Clint Black and Mike Barbeau. So welcome, fellas.
Hi.
Hey.
Also me. No. Hey, there he is.
Yeah.
Right, and look at us repping Doomguard with our official
right.
Okay,
right. Doomguard.
Right, we didn't give any to Mike. That wasn't part of the perks of just like designing a whole board game, testing it, going to like 12 cons. None for you, Mike.
It's actually warm in my my apartment right now, where I'd be wearing my hoodie.
Nice. Yes. We did give you a deluxe, nice warm hoodie. That's another thing too. We have to buy stuff for like the warm weather cons and the cold weather cons. It's not the same stuff. You can't get away with both. But so I think first question goes to Clint, sir. Tell us about the formation of Necessary Evil. What's the concept? How did you think of it? And give us a little rundown on all the different ways we can interact with Necessary Evil.
Oh, wow. Short question then. Great.
We got plenty of time.
Yeah. So the origin of Necessary Evil goes back many, many years ago, many moons. I just discussed this in a stream last night that was bringing up of the concept for it came about from the idea of a lot of great ideas come when you're given restrictions. And in this case, it was the idea of, it was a forum that talked about superhero RPGs. And I had the idea of how could you run a full campaign where the players played supervillains? And from that was the concept for Necessary Evil of, well, what if there are no more heroes left and you have a greater evil to deal with, you know? And that's basically what Necessary Evil is, you know? Alien invasion, they kill 90-some% of the heroes, and the villains are left to become the resistance against the aliens who have occupied Earth. And that's the core Necessary Evil setting. And then since then, talking about how to interact with it, we've had Necessary Evil 2 Breakout, which is a little bit of a prequel, but it's like, it's a different power level first. It's more on line of Spider-Man level city villains mixed a bit with Escape from New York, because the aliens are using Manhattan as a prison, just putting a force field around it, you know, leaving the worst of the worst in there.
But not Escape from LA, so I can't surf on a tidal wave through a city, right?
I mean, it's got to be Steve Buscemi's finest role. I mean, Fargo is amazing, but come on now.
I'm not going to say it's impossible. Okay. And then just recently we had Cosmic Crisis, taking Necessary Evil to Cosmic Power Level 5, that's out there to interact with NE.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. So let me show folks. So if you are new to the Necessary Evil universe in Savage Worlds, because we do have some Game Found folks who are just joining us to the board game Doom Guide, which we will get to in a hot second. You can purchase. Let me pop this up on screen so you can see. So over at pegging.com, there's a link in the chat. It's this one right there with the Get Your Necessary Evil on. And I'll just show you guys real quickly what we've done. We've already had a campaign for this, so it is off of the printers. It is getting manufactured, and it should be arriving hopefully later this year. But we went back through and we updated all the original campaigns to the current rule set of Savage Worlds. All new art, or a lot of new art. I think we kept a couple pieces because they were just fantastic and we couldn't not reprint them. But a bunch of new art, a lot of play aids to go along with it, like, you know, Benny's tokens, cards, dice, conviction coins. So you can get on all three of the campaigns. You can get the original campaign, you can get the Breakout, which is like a prequel, and then you can get the Cosmic level 1. So these are the 3 books here. And so a lot of fun. It's a really kind of great. I think this is my next question to you, Clint, is what's it like being able to play villains? How is that different than, I mean, you can play both, but I mean, it's your villains against the higher, the bigger bad, the more ultimate evil. So, you know, you just gotta, you know, save Earth so you can take it over versus what's going on. But how's that, you know, what is that like playing? How's it more creative? What's the sales pitch on getting to be a little evil when you're being good in your role-playing game?
You know, there's a saying, you know, that you hear amongst the acting community a lot, that I'd rather play the villain because it's a much more interesting role, you know? And that happens a lot with Necessary Evil of you get to really build into that concept of why is your character considered a villain? Because no one considers themselves the villain of the story. From their point of view, they're typically the hero of the story. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, super villain is something that society puts on these people, you know, and so it's really great. It's, again, it kind of goes back to that idea of, hey, if you've got some restrictions on your character, like society considers you a supervillain, then that actually spurs a lot of creativity. I mean, I've had, she's in chat right now, but I actually ran Breakout for Jody and our oldest daughter. And Jodie's character was essentially kind of a poison ivy-esque eco terrorist. I mean, she's a scientist or whatever, and it's like, but it's the case that, you know, the world was, you know, in a mess, and what society considered illegal and stuff, she considered the greater good of saving the entire world, you know, and the ecosystem.
Well, so that's a great question for Mike. Is in the Doomguard board game, you're playing a mixed team of heroes and villains, and there are times when you might choose to be a little more villainous than purely heroic. Like, I mean, for instance, I think when we were playing, playtesting was a really great game, but there was a time where we would have failed the scenario likely if we went back and saved all of the innocent bystanders. And we saved enough to win the scenario, to meet the minimum requirements of the scenario, but there were still some innocent bystanders left on the board. And I think if we tripped another round for every character, you know, that would have been, we would have failed the scenario. So, you know, we left some folks to fend for themselves, and you know, took the win on the scenario versus kind of, you know, being purely good guys and saving every last one. What other kind of elements in kind of Doomguard speak to kind of the interesting play between being superheroic and being a little super villainous?
Oh my goodness. So there's a few that really pop in my mind, and some of them stick out just because of the demos that we ran at BGGCon. You know, players, I think we're all this way, right? If we sit down at a demo, we love to cause as much chaos as possible, and destroying landmarks within the city and going crazy. I can't remember I think the card's name is called At Any Cost. But essentially one of the characters straps some C4 to a landmark and just levels it, right? In theory, you do that because you want to stop the bad guys and, you know, progress the scenario and that kind of thing. But part of you is doing it just because you want to blow up a building. Meanwhile, there's also characters. The one that Clint showed off there, Ogre. She is, I think, the most notoriously evil of them, as she doesn't even just have things that can go bad for the party. She actively can steal everybody's energy and use their resources to do her own thing. You know, I think you played Mantle probably, where you set your allies on fire, and hey,
Mantle's so good. So good. I mean, like,
yeah.
So the best
like
part
the fire.
If your
you
friends
set somebody on fire.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. I'm just really excited about Mantle. Mantle's fun.
Yeah, there's a Mantle one.
It happens. We got a little bit of lag. It's. There we go. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes you help your buddies and then you walk away forgetting that you had to stay so close to them. And then they go from being able to use fire to, you know, kill bad guys to burning alive, which I've done a survey, and that is something people don't like.
Oh, I thought it was kind of fun to be like, as long as you're close enough to Mantle and you follow him around, you're protected by his power. So you can use fire, and you're technically on fire, but you're not taking damage from it. But yeah, if you wander too far away from Mantle, then stinks for you. Yeah, I think people maybe need to play it to really appreciate it. Because I thought it was a really cool mechanic, because I think there's a lot of interesting dynamics in the Doomguard board game on where you are on the map, being able to move around, the teamwork elements. So, sometimes you just need to teleport a player across the map, and if they just happen to get out of the zone of protection from Mantle, I mean, what's a little singeing the cape amongst friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just what it's
like.
Yeah,
and we've got other. Oh, go ahead.
Mike,
we're all too polite, right? It's like everybody's saying no after you. Yeah. But one of the big ones to tie back to Necessary Evil, we have a hero pack that I hope we get to unlock. But one of the characters in it is actually a Vasori who got left behind, named the Neomind. And one of his big mechanics is actually he turns bystanders into drones and uses them to go throughout the street and actively fight off evil. But he doesn't take corruption normal. If his drones get completely taken out, he loses faith in himself as being the new supreme Neomind, and goes crazed. So not everybody from Necessary Evil, not all the story have left. Some are stuck behind and just trying to make the best of a good situation in terms of heroes being back.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask this question with both of you. I'll start with Clint. Because the ultimate evils kind of in Necessary Evil and Doomguard aren't just one thing. Like I think folks have seen in the board game where we're starting with the Cthulhu mythos. But Clint, let's just start with you. Talk about kind of who are the Vasori, how did they kick it all off, and then we'll go to Mike to talk about not only the Cthulhu aspects, but also the potential future ultimate evils that we can even encounter. And then for folks who are curious, so because I think we have a little bit of lag because my internet is crap today because we got a snowstorm happening right out the window, is I'm going to put up a link to the rule book. So if you are curious about reading the rules of Doomguard, we've got our draft rule book up at that link, so you can download that full thing and actually kind of get into the meat and potatoes of playing superheroes and villains. But to you, Clint, let's start. Who are the Vasori, and why is a superheroic team needed to conquer, to fight those folks back?
Well, now the Vasori have a long history actually with the Earth, in that originally a group of them, on their home planet, a group of them decided to leave. They landed on Earth, and because they're aquatic, they end up founding the nation of Atlantis. So the Atlanteans in our world of Necessary Evil are just an offshoot of the Vasori. And they tended to deal more with their psionic powers, and they were kind of trusted that. They were kind of okay with, magic to some extent, but technology, they had seen things go awry sometimes. Well, along comes one of the Atlanteans who decides, hey, I'm going to get into some technology, and essentially their version of maybe a Lex Luthor. And what he ends up doing is building a device that drains the mental powers of other Atlanteans and gives them to him. And he becomes what we know as the Overmind, and the Atlanteans essentially ship him back off the planet. They exile him, and he goes back to the Vasori homeworld, takes over, resets up this whole empire of the Vasori going out and conquering, but he never forgets what they did to him. And so Earth is always on his mind.
Always on his mind.
Yeah. Buff Dragon has a question. Yes, there are Atlanteans in Necessary Evil. They are playable, as are half Atlanteans, because they've been here a while.
But not Rifts Atlanteans. We're not crossing the Rift streams.
No, not the Rifts Atlanteans. These are our own. So the Vasori have, a certain beef with, they've decided to just apply it to the entire Earth. But when you get into reading the first Necessary Evil, it is very specifically noted that they have a plan when they come in. They've prepared for this. But they, one of the first things they do is take out Atlantis. Destroy the country, the city of Atlantis, send the inhabitants just as refugees across the seven seas, as they say, and then proceed to destroy other places. So we have a group of very intelligent, prepared, psionic, mind-reading, telepathic, telekinetic, aquatic aliens who've come to Earth with advanced technology. And if
you're not a superhero, you're a villain. If you don't have superpowers, you're not equipped to take on this potentially Earth-ending threat, right? That's the stakes are the Earth itself.
Yep. Yeah. They've already taken it. They already run the Earth. You got to take it back. Somebody said, you gotta. Sorry, Just saw Game Master Allen's comment about a good fish fry. One of the minions of the Visori are the Catharan, which are like shark-like. It's a shark-like alien race that works for them. And in one of the original playtests and games I ran, I had he was like a Batman-esque villain called Kitchen King. But he had gone a little snappy after his Batman was killed in the invasion. So he was all about making shark fin soup.
So not PC anymore, Clint. You can't.
Well, when he's making
sharks.
it off of the Catharans, yeah.
Oh yes, that's true. Oh yeah, I wish I had some Catharan to deploy, but they are pretty badass looking shark dudes, and so
he had a major vengeance for them because they had killed quite a few of his minions, the Spice Girls.
Like Old Bay seasoning girls. Okay, so Mike, picking up on kind of alien invasion, crazy different alien races taking on Earth. Tell us about the first group of Ultimate Evils in the Doomguard board game that we'll be taking on.
Yeah, so this was tied to Aaron, something he thought about a while ago in the whole Supers vs. Cthulhu concept, which I think, just about everybody you talk to about this with that elevator pitch, they're immediately interested. Either they're like, superheroes, okay, but I love Cthulhu, or they're like, Cthulhu, but I love superheroes. So it tends to mash. So we started with, I think, two of the most common or well-known ones, which is Cthulhu himself and Azathoth. Cthulhu, when you choose to fight him, because you can go against either of them whenever you play, the campaign is built around being able to insert whichever one you want. But Cthulhu, if you become crazed, you fall to his madness kind of thing. You advance the doom and it becomes worse and worse. And so that's the big scary thing that can push you over the edge faster. Whereas Azathoth is all about the destruction and end of everything. So he doesn't really care if you go mad. What he really cares about is if stuff's breaking. And so he helps elevate and escalate that part of the game so that you go from having a well-built city to, a couple rubble piles and, the game ends there. And so we focused on these two and these two different play styles for the first two. People have asked, we do have additional ones planned both to go in the box as stretch goals, but also as expansions.
Yeah, so
and it's not just Cthulhu.
I love how you've incorporated those two major mechanics into both the locations and the characters, the heroes, the guardians that we're playing. So you've got, physical damage, which is collateral damage to the buildings and wounds to the characters. And then you've got kind of corruption, which affects both. And there's really interesting just kind of narrative and mechanical effects on when the characters get too many wounds or they become crazed or when buildings kind of flip. So talk a little bit about that. How does corruption and collateral damage work mechanically in the game?
So if anybody has ever seen a superhero movie, I know they're very rare out there, and so people might not have seen them, but there tends to be a lot of accidental destruction. Like, I'm fairly sure insurance companies don't exist in the MCU. So as you're fighting things, there is accidental collateral damage when you do combat. And that can eventually lead to a structure being destroyed, which of course is bad. The citizens get upset. The doom gets closer because you're destroying the city. But in addition to that, the corruption that seeps through, whether it's from an elder god, an alien invasion, robot apocalypse, an army of hell, whatever may be causing the current corruption of the world, lends these changes to the environment and heroes. So some heroes like Echo 6, her super suit fritzes out and she has to build up momentum trying to run around the board. Or someone like Hellcat reconnects to her roots of evil magic and becomes all about literal fire and brimstone. Or the city, becomes too maddened by the corruption. And so, things start spawning out of the subway, or the nuclear power plant goes, well, nuclear.
Boom.
And might destroy half the town. There's all of these and, more that, depending on what happens to them, it can get way worse. And then the closer you are to where the evil is coming from, in this case, the corrupted docks, the less corruption the location can actually take. So, when you're setting up the board, you have to look at it and go, okay, there's this really cool thing I want to make sure stays in the game, but I randomly placed it right up next to the docks. That's something you have to worry about there, rather than maybe doing a mulligan on a landmark and getting a new one in there that isn't quite as good.
So one of the questions we got from the Doomguard page, which I'm scrolling through now so you guys can see our campaign. It's over on GameFound. There is a link in the chat. Let me put that up on screen for folks so you can find that. But the one of the questions that came through is how do the individual scenarios form together into the campaign? So I'm going to add to that, Mike. I think talk about the example of the kind of the infection mechanic that happens in one of the scenarios, and how that can linger if you don't get to the certain locations.
I know the scenario you're talking about. So first things first, each scenario can be played as a standalone fight. Bust out the game, sit down, hang out with your friends for a while, play it, you're done with it. It works by itself. There are some that are easy, some that are, a bit more complex because they add extra mechanics into it. But overall, you don't have to worry about, not being able to get together every week and forgetting about the story that's being told. That being said, if you're playing through the scenario, there are certain, let's call them secondary objectives that can occur. Like maybe you get infected by something and you have to get it out either through magic, medicine, or weird science. And if you do get it out, hey, good for you. You're cleansed and you can move on with life. But if you fail to do it, the future scenario, you may keep a status card, in which case for the rest of the campaign or until you do it, you still have to try to get rid of this thing that's inside you, lest you keep suffering from it.
I really like
it's a pretty big penalty.
The reason that one came to mind, I think the scenarios do build towards a campaign, but there's not a whole lot of bookkeeping. Like if you do need to put the game away and then bring it back out again, you're not going to spend an hour trying to figure out where your characters were and all that. It's very elegantly designed by Mike and crew, so that those kind of things, your status cards are just with your character. So there is consequences, but they're very easy. They're very elegantly in the game. And one of the reason that scenario was interesting to me, although kind of the infection scenario, was that you just mentioned in your previous comment about the different locations, and kind of how in that scenario there were up to potentially 3 different places you could go and remove your parasite. But not all those locations remained active the whole time, because we had collateral damage and corruption, and you're trying to get across the board to get to the hospital to have it surgically excised, or burned out with one of the other locations, and that location just no longer existed. And so it's like, oh shucky darns, I guess I'm gonna have to keep my little fellow dark passenger into the next scenario. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, Mike, about how how is the board set up? What do the locations mean? Are they the same all the time? That's talk about that mechanic.
So it's I like to call it living board. It's modular. You can adjust where the locations are. But part of it is every time you go into a game, when you randomly set up the map, you get to see what's going to happen, where something goes mad, what changes based on your placement. And you as a group have to decide what's worth saving. And, maybe your group decides that we need to save the bank, and so that stays. Maybe the group decides that they can let, the power plant get destroyed. But no matter what happens, the choices you make, some consequences can lapse through. So if, a landmark gets destroyed, it might not show up in the next scenario. Likewise, if the villains let the place become corrupted because the effect on the backside is beneficial for them, it may stay corrupt in the next mission, or people may start with a penalty involved with it. So there's a lot of different things that can happen and change based on what you're doing and what you're willing to fight for, so to speak. And we've got other locations that are already fully designed and set up, whether they're in the city or on some strange island. That's different. Maybe there's a crashed spaceship somewhere out there, with little angry Atlanteans on it.
Or the city zoo, where the animals just happen to have more tentacles than they should. No.
Somebody did ask a question earlier, and I missed getting to talk about it. They asked when Doomguard was happening, though, and to get a little bit of an idea, anybody who has backed Necessary Evil 3, I believe there is a little more than a cameo in there from some of these people. I think you have a very friendly encounter with them, if that's a fair statement. So it is tied within the timeline of that.
Yeah, and local friend Matthew DiMolanta mentions that, hey, will this end up being a Necessary Evil campaign for the RPG? I would love that. Strong consideration, sir. I mean, if we're going to go through all the trouble of making all these minis and all these really cool characters, and I mean, no promises, but I'm pretty sure that it'd be pretty awesome to bring these to the table on the RPG side as well. So. If you
I also think I also think it's fair to say that if you're doing an RPG, right, especially if you're using some of this corruption concept, it's not hard for villains to lean into their passions, I guess, more than others might. Clint, somebody can have a passion for blowing things up. Don't give that expression.
It sounded like something I'd be watching on Telemundo. Passions.
Pasiones de superheroes.
That's right.
Ahora. So Clint, what's it like seeing your amazing little idea that was, I mean, how is it been 20 years so far? For when was the first Necessary Evil? It's been a bunch. It's definitely over a decade. So I think it's got the release.
It will be 20 years this year. Came out in 2004, the original.
Okay. So, yeah. Well, happy anniversary, sir. So what's it like seeing this kind of just the evolution of this idea from a little game scenario to a campaign to a book to 3 books to a board game and collaborating with other developers like Mike? I mean, what's that been like?
Amazing. I mean, what am I to say? I mean, it has been. I mean, when we started with Necessary Evil, I remember, when Shane and I we started talking about doing a second book, and we were kind of like, we kind of had the campaign kind of ended, we saved the word. And then we were like, well, what if we do a prequel? And, that's where Breakout came out of. And then, it just kind of came about of thinking about, well, what would be the evolution of the world post the invasion? And, we have a bit of that. I don't think we've got it out yet, but we have a timeline with a brief history of Doom, as we say, of the setting, which, is a lot of fun because, it ties more of Doomguard in with, Necessary Evil, but then it also explains things like, one of the aspects is, after the war's over, a lot of the villains were granted pardons, for fighting the aliens. Now, they didn't have to accept them, and it wasn't a pardon for anything they did in the future, but, it gave a lot of those characters second chances and things like that. And that's where you kind of have that logical but brief pause that people were like, how did you get the superheroes back? You've got that thing of, well, one, a lot of the villains had just finished fighting a war. Most of them were kind of like, I could take a break now for a bit, and it gave some time. And then also, Doomguard really does take into account of how would that invasion affect the world. And that's what Doomguard is based off of, is the concept of how can we be prepared for the next event like this. So, that's, in the RPG world, they get an AI that can predict bad things that are going to happen and do that. In the board game, here's the bad thing. It's just happening now. Here it is. Who are you going to fight it with? All Mike had to come up with was, how can I destroy the Earth? Okay, new scenario. Here we go. But I mean, it's been cool, and there's still Doomguard builds on that concept of, if we need the aid of a villain who has special abilities, we can bring them in, and it gives you that kind of a little bit unique opportunity of, it gives you almost a heroes working with the Suicide Squad kind of concept of, the heroes and the villains can work together a little bit more often, which I think, somebody had mentioned earlier that they really felt like they'd have a hard time playing a villain, but they could, they love playing superheroes. It's like, well, Doomguard gives you that option of, you can be working together, because what you're fighting against is, as Christian says, kind of like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Things go bad, we all work together. Or the Justice League Unlimited animated series, for those who saw it, like the very last season, where Apocalypse is coming to the invasion, and the Legion of Doom literally like allies with the Justice League to protect the Earth. And at the end, it's like Batman gives them a 5-minute head start. It's like, it's a great, great scenario. But seeing what's happened to it has been awesome.
Awesome. Well, so if it sounds like someone's doing construction in the room next door, it's because they're like tearing out my basement as we speak. So I'll try to keep it muted when they turn on the chainsaws. We got a great question from Christian Serrano. Is what are some of the PEG staffers' favorite characters to play, and why? So Mantle is pretty awesome. Again, you're setting everything on fire. I think I really like Blackguard, because he's very utilitarian with his deck on kind of it's like a gadget deck. And I really like that you can play a lot of those gadgets on other players' turns, on different turns it's not just on your own turn. You can really, I think you stay engaged. And this is across most of the characters, actually, but you can stay engaged during other people's turns, because you've got a lot of interesting strategy on what powers you can bring to the table. Like, you can help move characters around, you can take damage for them or corruption for them. So there are a lot of times where, for us to figure out, like, to win a scenario, when we're on the verge of losing it, it really required everybody to find a way of, okay, well, that character is trapped on that side of the board, they don't have enough movement, or there's a character on that square that's going to destroy them if they leave by normal means. So we can switch places, and I'll take the damage from Big Bad, who's on that square, who might be the guy right over here. Just saying. Or giving people an extra, they need one more energy to be able to pull off what they need to, and you've got a card that helps do that. So I think that's my favorite, besides setting people on fire, which is pretty awesome. I like the utility belt. So Clint, who's your favorite? Then Mike, who's your favorite? And Jody answered too. Jody's answer is she likes Hex because the universe bends to my will. So we'll have Mike explain what the universe bends to my will on his turn. But Clint, you first. Which of the characters is your fave?
Wow. I would probably go with Echo 6. And I part of that is I love a speedster. I just love a speedster, and Echo 6 just has, because part of it's a fun play style of movement, kind of like in Savage Worlds. Movement is really important in the game, and so being able to get additional moves to other locations can be really helpful. And it's one of those things that it's like in Savage Worlds, not a lot of people see how movement and how much movement, like I tell people, sometimes you don't understand how powerful the fleet-footed edge can be. Being able to outdistance somebody just a little bit can be really helpful. But yeah, I love the movement thing. I like the thing. And you know, being a story guy, you know, I love her story too. I mean, you know, it's just essentially of, yeah, I'm just going to be a hero as long as I can. And I know that time is limited because the suit, it's Echo 6 because the suit has killed Echoes 1 through 5, you know? And yeah, so yeah, I like playing, I like playing Echo 6 quite a bit. I did kind of enjoy playing Ogre. I didn't enjoy playing with Ogre. But
yeah, I think Ogre is Shane's favorite too, because when you're ever playing with Shane always plays the frenemy character. Like, are they really on our team or not? Like, that Shane likes those characters. So
I gotta admit, Ogre is fun, and I love Ogre's Crazed, which is essentially her armor's fallen apart. And I love the way Mike's done it. Of suddenly she's like, oh no, I've like turned over a new leaf. I'm here to help everybody. Oh, my armor's back again? Die. You know, I'm done with you all. You're beneath me. That's fun. Yeah, but I like that.
So Mike, designer's choice, who's your favorite to bring to the table?
That is a really interesting way to put it, Jody. So first I have to ask Landauer, are we talking core box or everything that's made so far? Because there's stuff that we haven't unlocked yet.
Let's do both. So start with the core box, and then give people a sample of like there's other stuff to unlock. So get your friends to back now, please. Yeah. So do both.
Okay. So if I was going with the core box, I would say either from a game designer standpoint, either Warden or Echo, or not Echo 6, Hex, because they are very much support characters in two different ways. But I played a lot of games where if you're playing the support character, you feel like a little left out because you're not doing as much fighting. And the fact that you can do all of your combat stuff, you can still fight enemies, you can still do scenario action, still everything, but I get to buff you. I'm one of those players. I know there's a lot out there. If Clint does 1 million damage to an enemy and half of that damage is because of my buff, I basically just did half of that damage, and I feel good about being me. And so I enjoy those kinds of characters, and I enjoy not feeling left out because I like those kinds of characters. So supporty is my answer for that. If I were to say expansions, the other person in the Neomind box is called Spellbinder. He is your everyday professor who got a hold of a book, and the book has some not so nice eldritch words in it. And he flips the script on the entire game. He wants all the corruption he can get. He wants to become crazed, which means he's hard to play into Cthulhu, right? You're willing to go hard mode if you're playing him there because you might bounce back and forth a lot. But he then takes all his craze stuff, his corruption, and turns it into spells or summoning tentacles or doing all of the stuff that the Elder Ones want him to do, but using it for good, or at least not that kind of evil. And then when he goes sane, he sometimes hits you with his big old book. Use what tools you got. Outside of that, this one's kind of a bigger spoiler, but it's one I know people have gravitated to. So Captain Might, who is not the champion, we did discuss that a bit, but Captain Might, who went down saving the city, he gets resurrected in the campaign. His scenario is actually possibly my favorite one there is. Let's just say you fight an undead Captain Might, or at least you hold him off while you try to save the city. We have an upgrade pack that I really hope we get to unlock because it has like the nice little goodies, but it also has a playable version of Captain Might. And Captain Might's superpower is just flat out, he does not take damage at all. You throw him out there, he takes a punch, he does not care. But I also tied him very close to the bad guy. So he's got similar power stunt cards like Comet Punch and things like that. All of his cards, I'll be frank, are better than everyone else's. Hey, he's Captain Might. He's meant to be better. But his corruption threshold is only 4, So he becomes crazed insanely easy. And when you become crazed with him, all of your cards, they're called forced cards, which means you have to play him as soon as you can. And so it may be like he attacks, but it damages everything within so much space. So you might actually be hurting your allies in addition to hurting the enemies. And so it's so fun because you also have your allies sitting there going, oh no, he's going to take corruption. Somebody do something to stop that. You know, you're a great weapon for the group, but you're also this great hindrance that you're now making them deal with in addition. And so I get a big kick out of that. Yeah, so those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, if folks have been paying attention to the art we've shared or some of the advertisements, there's this great little summoning circle with cultists, and they are levitating a certain Captain Mike character that way. And I think that was my favorite of the scenarios that I got to play test. I think I got through about 3/4 of them before I had to fly home. That was my favorite one because there's just one that really features Captain Mike as not a good thing for the Doom Guard, and he is a force of nature, and it's just the effects he has on the board and the strategy you need. And I mean, it really put all of the teamwork to the limit on that scenario. And that was the one where I think of the rules of the time, and hopefully they're still there. If you're in the same, so he randomly like shoots up to orbit and then drops down on one of the locations. And if you're there, you can't leave without tangling with him, and he's probably going to mess you up. And we had one character, one of the Guardians, who needed to be the one to accomplish one of the goals, and they didn't have enough health to really try to tangle. And so that was when the teamwork came in. We figured out if we get someone else close enough, then they could play a card that would switch two of the characters, so he could like teleport out. And I was like, oh yes, it was so good having that kind of that teamwork moment. So
my favorite on that. Sorry, I got to share this. It is again a bit of a spoiler, but we played through like a lot of this. If anyone's curious, like, oh, does this take all day to play? We played through, I think, 3/4 of the campaign in one day, just sitting there like rocking out, eating because Shane loves to get the good food. There's a lot you may not run into, either because a card isn't drawn or because you get a specific phase 2 card and not the other one. And so I remember this thing came up, and it was something along the lines of, anybody that takes payback from Captain Mike this turn is killed. And I think it was either you or it was Simon. Somebody looked over me and went like, killed? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're gone. And he's like, look at it. He's like, oh. And so like then it became how do we avoid letting him hit us this turn?
It was so fun. And I think you just had a little author self-insert where you called him Captain Mike. I approve.
Oh, Captain
Mike. Yeah.
He'll have a beard I can never grow.
he is some gorgeous looking art. I mean, I'd hit on him if he were real. But before we can talk about some of the other Ultimate Evils that hopefully unlocked, if not in this campaign and future campaigns, one of the really cool. Let me see if I can't share it on the screen already. Can I share? A really cool. You mentioned hard mode, and one of the awesome things that we just unlocked because we were able to figure out some cool shipping for our European friends. And that helped us out enough where we could actually unlock this a little bit early. Let me see. Here we go. The Avatar. So, Mike, who is the Avatar, and how is this hard mode?
Okay. So the whole point of dealing with these existential threats is they are threats that if Cthulhu ever showed up, or like if the Ultron uprising ever went into full swing, like we're just done. We're out, right? And so you never actually fight a full-grown Cthulhu. No, we're not going to print a 8-foot tall mini just to beat Death May Die on theirs. Death May Die, you won. I submit. But so eventually you can run into rituals or things that let them get close. And in this instance, that's what we're talking about. This is a creature that does show up at the end of the campaign. However, we do have an additional nightmare mode where rather than just facing him at the end or that final hard mode campaign, you can insert him in addition to the other minion groups. And what that will mean is if you put his cards, one per player, in the Dark Portents deck, and if you draw him, he shows up. Now, he's not like these other guys where it's like you read his defense, and once you do, they're defeated. You have to do that multiple times because he's so tough. And he doesn't just hit you for a couple points. He hits you for a lot of damage, and he lights you on fire. And just being there, he starts demolishing the landmarks all around him. And so you put, in addition to an extra enemy that is going to show up, a whole new timer on the board, especially if he shows up with Azathoth, right? Because he's destroying the buildings. And as I mentioned early, Azathoth loves that. So he's going to start destroying more things. Azathoth's going to advance faster, and the world is going to end. So he is there if you really want to play hard mode, nightmare mode, whatever grueling task. When somebody wants to do a no-hit run through Elden Ring kind of fight, you can place the avatar in your deck and watch your friends groan as it comes up and blame you for making this choice for them.
That is so awesome. So for folks, I mean, we're getting to the end of our hour, and I don't want to. We need to get back to pushing the campaigns and all the good stuff. But I didn't want to forget that Dice Tower is going to be doing a live playthrough of Doomguard. It is in 3 days. I just put the link in the chat. It's on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube now and click follow, and you'll get a notification in 3 days. I think it's January 30th. I think it's 10 a.m. Eastern. 8 a.m. Mountain, 7 a.m. Pacific. So that's going to be awesome. We're sending Simon down to Florida, and he'll get lost in the Keys afterwards, I'm sure. But that'll be a great chance for you guys to see some Doomguard in play. Also, there's plenty of videos already on the campaign page. If you haven't gone there, I'll put all this links again before we're done on the stream. But we appreciate everyone joining us for all the awesome questions. And definitely check out the live play from Dice Tower, because that's going to be really exciting. And then I'm sure we'll get a lot of really crunchy rules questions. One interesting one that I think Grom mentioned that this was in reference to, I think, Twilight Imperium. But Mike, why don't we do as the last question? How many players can play Doomguard? Is there a solo mode? How long do scenarios generally take? The cover the bases one more time for folks on the Doomguard board game.
Okay, yeah. So mind you, this is coming from somebody who's played this game for the past 5 years. Many iterations of it, but I've played a lot of games. Let's just leave it at that. So I would say your very first game takes a little bit longer. If anybody's played a new game, you understand this. But on average, the earlier games can take about 45 minutes, depending on how much table talk and chit chat and how many players. You can do one player. You just use 2 Guardian boards. There may be a future instance in where there is a different kind of solo mode where you have sidekicks. But for right now, much like if you were to play something like Death May Die or Gloomhaven, right? You just put out 2 boards, you look at 2 sets of cards, and you play it. You can play up to 5 people. You can also watch up to 5 people play, which is what I did at BGG Con one night, and watch all of these new players try to play their teamwork cards over one another just to outdo each other for who can help player 1 the most. So you can go up to 5, down to 1. The later games take closer to an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how many players. I will say for any game, including this one, I have found once you go above that 4-player threshold to 5, games do take a little bit longer. But in general, if y'all know the rules, it's reasonably quick. Setup doesn't take long. You're grabbing your guardians, you're setting up the board, you're randomly selecting landmarks, you're following a few instructions, and then you're getting up and going. I don't think 10 minutes is too long for saying it's probably about that. Again, that's once you've got your tokens sorted and whatnot. If you're just dumping it out of the box like a madman with no sorting in there, I don't know how long it takes. That sounds like sociopath behavior. Clint, I know you're a sociopath. It's okay.
Everyone's welcome to play. So yeah, folks, the campaign we just launched. We are 83% funded, so we're almost there. to check it out at GameFound. It's a new platform for us. It's been pretty exciting so far. We're just watching the excitement for. It's a pretty novel concept. I mean, everybody. Cthulhu is an awesome kind of mythos to play in, but this time you don't have to be a defeatist, almost suicidal bookworm who is just going to accept defeat. You can actually have superpowers, which is and blast Cthulhu with them and his minions and all that good stuff. So we're almost funded. Help us get there. Share, and I'm pretty sure our box is going to have amazing organization built in. Simon has done some cool stuff with that. John Doom, and just to be sure, it is not John Doomguard. Although I mean, serious consideration with branding and co-branding opportunities there. But yeah, as Jody said, help us get funded. We appreciate the
Landauer. I will say, my dream is to have somebody care enough that Broken Token busts out and makes their own organizer. I've got that for my Lords of Waterdeep because I love that game. So. Broken Token shout out. You want to make one?
Right. We love you. Please be awesome. So yeah, help us get the exposure we need, guys. It's it's a new platform for us, and I mean technically board games aren't brand new to Pinnacle. I think your Great Rail Wars kind of counts and some of the tabletop, but we are looking to bring some of your other favorite properties in addition to Necessary Evil in the form of Doomguard, but hey, maybe even Deadlands and some other great stuff to the board game space. So help us get a beachhold. With this community and then this other part of the games industry. Sure, like the price is pretty great. It's $125 for the base game. Includes a lot of great miniatures. We're really excited about it. And I think the best part for me is it's a very fun game to play. I don't have enough friends to be a board game guy, like playing them in-house. That's why I'm an RPG guy. You can go to conventions and have more fun that way. But it was a great time play testing this. It was very easy to get into. Like Mike said, setup is actually pretty straightforward, and it's got a great level of complexity for how simplistic some of it is. So I think one of the questions I think before was, is this based on Savage Worlds? Not strictly. You're not going to find bennies and exploding dice, but I think Mike has really captured the fast, furious, fun kind of mantra of Savage Worlds in this game. So yeah, I think it definitely speaks a lot to more board game mechanics, but it's a very great game. It's a lot of fun. And if you're still waiting for that next paycheck from Christmas and all that stuff, there is stretch pay available, which is a really cool thing that the platform allows. So
yeah, that was with GameFound is the stretch pay, and just says, well, I'd love to be able to buy all my board games on a payment plan. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I think the way it's set up is it's several months worth of payments you can make, so it's very reasonable.
It's like layaway back in the days, right, with Walmart.
Yeah. Right, we just need some benefactor to come and pay off all our layaways. It'd be great. Charity for games. So yeah. Anyway, folks, that is our hour. We appreciate you joining us. I think we'll probably do this again, but yeah, check out the Dice Tower live play coming up in 3 days on January 30th. At 10 a.m. Eastern. So Simon will be down there with the Dice Tower crew playing Doomguard and right.
Yeah, if you want to use these characters in your Savage Worlds game, be aware that you will find most of these guys in the archetypes for the Superpowers Companion. Statted up for Savage Worlds, ready to play. So,
right.
Yeah, of course. The connection to Savage Worlds there. You can bring these guys in there. Yeah.
We can cross the streams. We can do it all. So, so join us on GameFound. It's a pretty great platform. We're very excited to kind of meet a whole bunch of new European friends because it is a European hosted platform. So that has been very awesome to kind of, spread the word across the pond to all our friends over there. But other than that, again, check out the live play in 3 days with the link. Let me put that link up one more time. I find it. I think I had it in the comment. Here it is. I will just copy and paste.
I'll also be there in chat answering any questions. So if you guys have questions while Simon's playing, I'll be able to pitch in so that he can keep the action rolling forward.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So here it is. There's the link. So yes, find us. That'll be the next awesome Doomguard thing coming out. And if you guys are on the fence, give us a back, give us a like, give us a share, help us get to that. Our goal, we're 85% the way there. It'd be awesome to start unlocking some of those amazing stretch goals. We do have some very cool stretch goals besides what we've already revealed. So help us get there. And other than that, thank you, Mike and Clint, for joining us. Jody in the chat, Shane in spirit, he's hanging out backstage. And other than that, guys, we're super happy that you guys are able to see this awesome new product. And let's see, any other stuff I should mention. For Savage Worlds, folks, Fantasy Companion, Sci-Fi Companion is coming in February to Kickstarter. And then if you want to get in on the Necessary Evil, the link was earlier, but head to peginc.com and click on Necessary Evil at the top of the page, and you can pick up the RPG materials, which are amazing. And those will be coming in. Hopefully we'll have some production samples here soon, and we'll get you guys a date on when to expect those. And then a whole lot of stuff is getting shipped out from the factory this week, or from our warehouse this week. Rifts is almost done. The storm delayed that a little bit in the Midwest, but the Rifts campaign, really successful campaign. Folks are really loving those. And then we're going to have the Horror Companion up next. So hopefully sometime in February, that'll begin shipping. And then Pine Box Middle School, which is our kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, awesome setting, will be shipping after that. And then following those getting out the door, and once those are out, we'll have a little bit of timeline. But certainly in quarter 1, we will have Legend of Ghost Mountain box set. Gorgeous, amazing, really fun. That'll be the next one. And so, yeah, a lot of stuff coming from Pinnacle on the RPG and the board game space, folks. So we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you again soon. But check out that GameFound page. Give us a back and help us get funded. We appreciate y'all. Cheers, folks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.